Nobody likes to be judged. Nobody likes to be misunderstood. Let's keep it as it is. So when those things affect you, and I mean strongly affect you, then it's because you are not rooted in them yourself. And I know it's annoying. It's annoying, but this is really the truth. Trust me, tested and lived. That doesn't mean you cannot take constructive feedback. That is important, right? We are all here to grow, and we do mistakes, and maybe we sometimes do or say things that hurt others, and we are not doing this on purpose. So this is not about that. There is a difference between constructive feedback, which we all need, and growth, obviously, in our relationships, versus the need to feel like you need to defend yourself. You need to constantly justify yourself. You're constantly being misunderstood. We are only ever affected when there is something in us that connects to that. And usually what we don't like to be judged about is something inside of us that we are vulnerable about. You have to start with that injustice you carry inside yourself. Because even, let's say, someone says something about you that is not true. When you're rooted in yourself, you know how to respond accordingly. And sometimes you don't even feel the need. You let people think what they want. You're like, yeah, I can, you will think what you want. I know who I am. The conversation finishes here. When you can own up to who you are with your flaws, we humans, we have flaws. We do things wrong. We say things wrong. We make mistakes. That's the whole point. You can't avoid it. Otherwise, you might as well be dead physically. So if you are going to try to convince people that want to have a certain opinion about this not being correct, you will be exhausted. This is why I say being rooted like a tree. This sounds pretty, takes a lot of energy work, a lot of self-mastery. Self-mastery doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean invincibility. It means learning to be and behave and act and process in accordance to your energy. Hey, you don't understand me. I know, because whenever I felt that, it was my little Annie. It was not the grown-up Annie. What part of you always have to ask yourself, because we are made of so many parts, right? Like just like anything, just like a phone, like the laptop is made of 100 parts. It's not just made of one thing. What part of you is really sensitive to being misunderstood? And why it is so important for you to be understood? These are the real questions. There is nothing wrong with desiring validation. All of us, to a certain degree, need it. But the danger in validation is that it's so tied to value. So the way we are validated, we perceive our value. If a lot of people say the same thing, there is something to reflect on. But if one person says it here, and you still feel you need the need to convince this person, then that's on you. Because there is a difference between the natural desire for validation that we all need. Yeah. Because this is how we know ourselves. We know ourselves in relationship to others. That's why Venus, the sign of the relationships, 7th house, it rules also the 2nd, but the 7th, it has a mirror as a symbol. Why? Because it reflects back. When we need validation, and that's the danger between a natural need and desire to be validated and the need to be validated because we need to feel good, that is really dangerous, because then you make yourself dependent on what now someone says. If they say something good, you're good. If not, you're not. Of course, when we feel misunderstood, that's not a great feeling. But it doesn't have to be a difficult one either. It reflects your value, which means if you think you have a lot of value, if you know your value, it's not going to do much. And when people don't understand me, I said, okay, maybe I didn't express myself correctly. Because it can be sometimes because things are in my head and maybe the way I said it didn't come across in the way I wanted it. So I just repeat it, but it doesn't have an emotional effect on me. But if I'm insecure about this and then you misunderstand me, then I will react emotionally to it. One is neutral. I recognize I'm being misunderstood. I do recognize it, but it doesn't connect to my emotions. It doesn't connect, doesn't form some sort of emotion that I react to. I just neutrally observe it. Whereas this part that I need the validation, this is what people don't understand. Validation equals value. So when we are young girls, we value a lot of compliments that are based on our looks. We like when men tell us you look so beautiful, you know, you have a nice body. I mean, we as women will always love that. Okay. It's not like it's ever going to stop. But the older we get, the more we are rooted in who we are, those compliments are not flattering us anymore. Now, when someone compliments our energy, when someone compliments our way to speak, our speech, our communication, the way we handle things, now that's a compliment. And it's not one that we need, but it's one that validates what we know deep down and maybe weren't aware of or are aware of. But it reflects back what? Our value. When what we do comes from a pure space. So a space that is not, you know, evil intended, revenge intended, or anything. It comes from a pure space because that's who we are. I speak from passion. I am passionate. That's who I am. You have to make sure that what you say and do comes from that pure space. And when you do that, nobody can attack you. And even if they do, it's not going to land. That is the difference, you see? Because when you speak out of a certain intent, like I want validation, so I'm going to say these things, you make yourself very vulnerable in this moment, right? Because you tie your value to it. We all do. That's why I say. But if it comes from a clear intent, now I'm happy if this person can validate that, but I don't need this person to validate that. That's the difference. Because everybody has some sort of insecurities, right? We all have it. But it's about learning to, you know, navigate our strengths, master the energy. So when we do something, we do it with an intent that's so pure and clear. And that changes the whole game.